The deficit, right? Look, there's no ifs and buts about it. We're adding a trillion, $1 trillion worth of deficit to our budget deficit every 100 days. This is reality. Um, there is massive effects of what is what this is going to do to us, our future, our kids' future. But to be perfectly honest, I am not happy about it. Right? Why should anybody be happy about this? And if you are happy about it, well, you let me know. I'm certainly not going to continue going along with the charade that we're experiencing. And here it is. The first 8 months of fiscal 2024, okay? The US deficit hit a whopping 1.2 trillion, or to put it mildly, close to $5 billion a day. It's every single day, okay? In May alone, the deficit spending was 348 billion, or 11.2 billion a day, according to the CBO. CBO is the budget office, government budget office. They're the ones that keep track of these numbers. You have to take them at face value. If they say so, I mean, that must be true. Over the last 12 months, the U.S. deficit totaled $1.7 trillion, equaling 6.2% of U.S. GDP. The deficit as a percentage of GDP is above all-time highs, literally like ridiculous levels, okay? And it's actually the only time that was our deficit per GDP was higher was during the pandemic, because we had to spend $7 trillion to get the economy out of the mess that it is in, right? And well, how's this going to resolve itself? I am honestly not sure. The deficit spending as a percent of GDP is above all previous recessionary levels, except for the 2008 financial crisis and the 2020 pandemic and World War II. Look at the situation that we're in. At the same time, government expenditures, okay, what we spend, which we don't have. The way we spend it is we print it and we spend it. Hit 6.5 trillion, which is 23% of US GDP. Okay, our gross domestic product in this country is about $27 trillion. Okay, this is what the economy produces. This is what all of us produce. It could be manual labor, it could be service industry, it could be manufacturing, all of it. It's about $27 trillion per year. Our expenditures, just the government expenditures, are at 23% of GDP, and our debt to GDP is extremely, extremely high, right? So, and here's a little chart that I thought I would put up. As you guys can see, this chart goes to 2019, and in 2020, when the great financial crisis hit, and it spiked. You guys see that spike, right? And during the pandemic, the last spike that happened right about 2020, October 2020 to 2021. And then the deficit came down. Why is the deficit coming down, by the way? The tax receipts of the government is mostly dependent on the stock market staying where it's at or going higher and higher, because that is the majority of the tax receipts we're getting from capital gains, right? The higher the stocks go, the more capital gains people have to pay when they sell their stocks. And that's where our revenue is coming from these days, not from actual tax receipts. And so what is this going to create? Where is this going to end? The total deficit is 35 trillion. Next week, I'll talk about the CBO estimates going back 10 years out. There's talk that deficits are going to hit $60 trillion. Okay. I mean, how's this going to be resolved? I don't think that debt is ever going to get paid back. And now, the a lot of bigwigs now, including Jamie Dimon and Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary. I mean, the Federal Reserve Chairman Colin Powell. Jerome Powell has been talking about this for the last, I don't know, year and a half or so now, asking Congress to put their house in order because monetary policy follows fiscal policy, right? They have to create this money somehow to make up the budget, to balance the budget. And that's being done by printing, US dollars. And that is creating inflation in its own. So the federal IOU now, as of this second, those are all IOUs. And in the past, I talked to you guys about countries debasing their dollars, right? They're getting out of dollars, just like China is selling US treasuries. Japan is selling US treasuries. The BRICS, which is the European countries, they're selling their treasuries. They don't want to own the dollars because we just keep devaluing the dollar. The only reason we can keep doing that and the dollar is because the dollar is still the reserve currency of the world. But last week I talked about Saudi Arabia getting rid of the petrodollars. Now they're going to do dealings in other currencies, right? A lot of people are catching up to this game that this is out of control. These people don't have their house in order. Why should I keep my assets in dollar-based, in dollars? It's losing value continuously. And we know that on a small basis, let's say when we go to Costco, right? I mean, everything has gone up. The price of everything has gone up. That's called inflation. So the federal IOU now is $34.5 trillion, or about 11 trillion higher than where it stood in March 2020. According to CNBC, and Jeff Cox, a really good journalist, says chatter has spilled into government and finance heavyweights. Yeah, and I've been talking about this since I started the channel about 6 weeks ago. And has one prominent Wall Street firm wondering if costs associated with the debt pose a risk to the stock market rally. Well, it doesn't seem like it because the market just keeps chugging along, and we call it on Wall Street climbing the wall of worry, right? And it keeps making higher highs, although it's being kept up by about 4 stocks now. It used to be Magnificent Seven. 3 out of the 7 is kind of petering, and the 3 that just keep taking the train higher and higher. The CBO, Congressional Budget Office, estimates that debt held by the public compared to GDP will rise to an amount greater than any point in the nation's history. I mean, where are we here, people? What are we doing here? And the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, said recently that this is something that elected people need to get their arms around sooner than later. The panic buttons are being pushed. However, this year is an election year, as we know. Do you think the politicians in Washington are going to do anything about it, or do you think they're going to save their asses, save their jobs first before they tackle the deficit issue? Look, I'm not a political person. I don't like the government either way, Democrat or Republican. I don't trust the government. But what somebody has to tackle this problem at some point. Kicking the can down the road continuously is not going to solve this problem. Putting our head in the sand and not talking about it, let somebody else take care of it, is not going to solve the problem. I mean, this is a massive, massive, massive problem. Okay. And if it's not taken care of, right? I look at this deficit, and by the way, I talked about it last week, right? Just the servicing of this deficit is up to $900 billion, which is more than our Medicare budget, which is more than our defense budget. Why should we pay all that interest? Why can't we lower this deficit, not spend the money we have, just like in our own homes, right? We have budgets. We keep our budgets. We don't print money. We can't anyway. So that $900 billion just in interest that we pay on this $34.5 trillion IOU, because it used to be zero, now it's $900 billion a year, just the interest payments. This debt has to get serviced. Just like when we have a credit card debt, we have to make payments. U.S. government has to make payments on this debt. And it's up to $900 billion. That $900 billion could be used for so many good things if it didn't exist. And for 15 years, when we had ZIRP policy, zero interest rate policy, we didn't pay too much interest on that debt. Well, now that the rates are at 5%, they had to do it because they created inflation. They're trying to kill it now by raising rates from 0 to 5%. Now they have to pay interest on all that debt, right, at a 5% clip. and at $900 billion. Couldn't we take that $900 billion, get our infrastructure in order? Couldn't we take that $900 billion and, create some social programs that would help actually people? Couldn't we? I mean, the more I look at this, the more I'm going the Elon Musk way. Okay. At some point, right, we're going to have to provide, income for some people with AI now going where it's going, supposedly replacing everybody's jobs. What are these people going to do with this debt and with the interest payments that we have? All of this combined, I'm not liking what I'm seeing. My crystal ball is not liking what I'm seeing, but that's the topic. Um, a lot of people are pushing the panic button, not the panic button, the warning button, but I don't think anybody's listening. I don't think anybody's at home. And if you guys count on Washington, the House and the Senate to do something about it, good luck. They haven't done anything about it. Both parties, when they are in charge, and there has been periods that the Republicans had the executive branch and the legislative branch. Nothing was done. Well, there was some movement towards balanced budget amendment. I remember that Newt Gingrich days. It kind of worked actually. But then when the Democrats show up, tax and spend. When Republicans show up, cut taxes and spend. It just doesn't work. And both sides just need to get their shit together and save this country from going into a deeper hole than we're in. But then the CBO doesn't think so. CBO thinks the budget deficit is going to be in 10 years is going to be close to $60 trillion. Well, I feel bad for my kids. That's how I'm going to end this segment.